Asterisk asterisk. The night was dark and quiet. The only sound came from the soft hum of the transport ship. Derek, a human cargo pilot, leaned against the cold metal wall of the storage bay. He had just delivered medical supplies to the outer station. Now, his job was to carry a few sealed crates back to Earth. He didn't ask questions, he never did. But something about this cargo felt strange. The smugglers had rushed him, paid in cash, and told him not to open anything. That was always a bad sign. Curiosity itched at the back of his mind after 10 minutes of pacing. He couldn't take it anymore. He walked up to the largest crate. It was black, heavy, and locked tight. The scanner said it contained experimental equipment, but there were no power signs, no cooling system, nothing. He reached for his tools and cracked it open slowly. The lock popped, and the lid lifted with a metallic hiss. Cold air rushed out, carrying a strange smell. Derek froze. Inside the crate were 3 small figures, huddled together, eyes wide with fear. They weren't equipment. They were living beings, alien girls. No more than teenagers with thin bodies and glowing skin. One had soft blue scales over her cheeks. Another had cat-like ears and a long tail curled around her legs. The third looked almost human, except for her silver hair and large, glowing eyes. They blinked at him, shaking. Not one of them made a sound. Derek backed away, heart pounding. "What the hell?" he whispered. These weren't passengers, and they weren't supposed to be here. Were they slaves? Experiments, or worse? He looked at the control panel. No signs of life were registered. Someone had masked them. That took planning. The smallest alien girl reached forward and grabbed his glove. Her hand was cold and trembling. She didn't speak, but her eyes begged him not to close the crate again. Derek stood there, frozen between duty and fear. He could call the authorities, but what if they were corrupt? He could leave the girls here and pretend he never saw them. But their eyes followed him, silent, desperate. One of them suddenly coughed, a dry, painful sound. Her skin shimmered weakly as she slumped against the wall of the crate. Derek cursed under his breath and ran to his med kit. He knelt beside the crate, pulling out a water tube and breathing aid. The girl looked at him with fear, then opened her mouth slowly. He helped her sip the water, and she closed her eyes with relief. "Who did this to you?" he whispered. But they didn't answer. They couldn't understand him, or maybe they were too scared to speak. He scanned them again. No IDs, no translator chips, no records in the system. They didn't exist, just like slaves. A soft beeping sound broke the silence. Derek turned to see the tracker device on the crate blink red. His blood went cold. Someone was watching. Someone knew he had opened it. "They're coming back," he said to himself, standing quickly. His ship was too far out to reach help in time. And he didn't have weapons on board, not real ones. The girls looked at the blinking light too. They shrank back as if they knew what it meant. He had to make a choice. Leave them and run, or protect them and risk everything. He looked down at the alien girl still holding his glove. She didn't let go. Her tiny hand squeezed his, just enough to say one thing: "Don't leave us." Derek sighed deeply and shut the crate, but not to trap them. He sealed it with a new lock, one only he could open. Then he walked to the control panel and turned off all external signals. No one would trace them now, at least for a little while. He sat down, head in his hands. "What the hell do I do now?" he whispered to himself again. But there was no one to answer, just 3 alien girls, hiding in his cargo bay, and the silent promise he had made. He wouldn't let them be taken again, no matter what it cost him. Asterisk. The engines hummed low as Derek stared into the void of space. He had changed course, heading away from the main transport lanes. His ship was now hiding behind a drifting asteroid field. He didn't know where to go, but he knew one thing: he couldn't return to Earth. Not yet. Not with 3 alien girls hiding in his cargo hold. They hadn't spoken since he gave them food and water. They watched him with wide, unblinking eyes. The smallest one, the one with silver hair, stayed close to the others. She seemed the most alert, the most cautious. He tried speaking to them again, slowly. "Do you understand me?" he asked, pointing to himself, then at them. No answer. Just silence and breathing. He set down a plate of warm ration cubes and stepped back. The girl with cat-like ears sniffed the food, then pushed it toward the other two. She waited until they had eaten before she touched it herself. That made something in Derek's chest tighten. They were scared, starving, and still careful with each other. He noticed bruises on their arms and necks, some old, some fresh. Whoever had them before didn't treat them like people. They were property, cargo, and now, somehow they were his. Responsibility. A flashing light caught his eye. Motion sensor, something was approaching. He rushed to the controls and brought up the external cameras. A small ship had entered the same asteroid field. Unmarked, fast, and scanning, Derek cursed. Under his breath. It couldn't be a coincidence. They were being hunted already. He turned off all non-essential systems and powered down the ship's heat signature. His fingers hovered over the defense system button, but his ship wasn't built for combat. One hit and they'd be done. He crept back to the cargo hold, his voice low. "Listen to me. You need to stay quiet," he said, unsure if they could understand. But the silver-haired girl nodded, not just once, but twice, slow and calm. The other two followed her lead and curled into the corner of the crate. Eyes wide but still. They trusted her, and maybe, just maybe, they were starting to trust him too. The enemy ship hovered nearby for what felt like forever. Derek didn't move, barely breathed. Sweat dripped down his neck as he watched the monitor. Then finally, the ship turned away and jumped into hyperspeed. Gone. He let out a long breath and slumped into the pilot's chair. His hands were shaking. They had been seconds away from being found. He didn't want to imagine what would have happened if they had. Later, he brought more food and a small blanket. He offered it to the smallest girl, and she took it carefully. Wrapped herself in it like it was the only thing she owned. That broke his heart. She reached into her pocket and pulled out something small and shiny. A round pendant with symbols carved into it. She held it out to him, slowly, as if offering a gift or a message. He took it gently, turned it over in his hand. He didn't recognize the symbols, but he knew a distress beacon when he saw one. The pendant had been a locator. Maybe the smugglers used it to track them. That meant they couldn't just hide. He had to act. He looked at the girls again. They were watching him closely, afraid, but not of him. Not anymore. "All right," he whispered, more to himself than to them. "If I'm doing this, I'm doing it right." He walked to his control panel, opened the navigation map, and locked in a new destination, an abandoned mining station on the dark side of a dead moon. No patrols, no cameras, no questions. A place to rest, plan, and figure out what to do next. As the ship turned, the stars outside shifted. And so did something inside Derek. He didn't know these girls. He didn't even know their names, but something told him he couldn't let them go. Not until they were safe. Not until he understood what they had been through. And who would do something this cruel? The smallest girl laid her head on the crate wall. Her eyes closed slowly, and for the first time since he opened the crate, she looked at peace asterisk. Asterisk Derek didn't sleep that night. He sat alone in the control chair, watching the stars drift past the window. He had escaped the first tracker, but his heart told him it wouldn't be the last. Every system was locked down, signals muted, ship lights dim. Still, he felt eyes watching him from somewhere out there, behind him. The alien girls slept in a pile of blankets. They didn't make a sound, only slow, shallow breaths filled the dark room, like wounded birds hiding in a nest. When the first light of a distant sun touched the control panel, Derek turned and found the silver-haired girl awake. She was staring at him, not blinking. She moved slowly, crawled out of the blankets, and sat on the floor across from him. He offered her water, and she took it carefully. Then, without warning, she pointed to his arm. Confused, he looked down. She leaned forward and traced a small scar near his wrist. With one finger, Then she gently pressed her palm against her own chest. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Derek frowned, not understanding. She tried again, this time tapping her forehead, then drawing a circle in the air. It hit him she was trying to speak. She didn't know how to say it in his language, but she was trying. He grabbed a small toolpad, turned on the drawing screen, and handed it to her. She hesitated, then used her finger to draw. The image was rough but clear, a tall building, a circle at the top, and inside the circle another cage, and inside the cage one of her kind. It was her. She drew more, faster now. People in white coats, wires, needles, tests, chains, then flames. A man with dark armor, sharp red lines. Then a box, a crate, and silence. Derek watched with wide eyes. This was her life. She had been stolen, tested, and sold. He couldn't believe how calm she looked while drawing it. Suddenly, the ship lights flickered. His heart jumped. He checked the controls. No reason for power loss, no signal, no damage, but something had changed. He looked back. The silver-haired girl was frozen. Her eyes glowed slightly bright blue, like lightning behind clouds, then faded again. "What was that?" he whispered. She shook her head slowly and returned the toolpad. She wasn't ready to explain. The other girls woke up, stretching, yawning like small animals. One touched Derek's arm gently, then sat beside him. He realized it was the first time they had come close without fear. They trusted him now, at least a little. He gave them food and blankets and let them sit near the front windows. They watched space like it was a new sky they had never seen, maybe. It was hours passed in silence. Then the girl with the cat ears tapped his shoulder. She held up a piece of scrap metal and pointed at it. Then she mimed a twisting motion like opening a lock. He handed her a few tools, and she got to work within minutes. She opened the back panel of the metal, pulled out a small wire, and twisted it into a perfect communicator shape. Derek stared. She wasn't just a victim. She knew machines, knew how to build, maybe even hack. They weren't helpless. They were just lost. He sat back and watched her work. The other girls joined in, pointing, laughing silently, touching the buttons for the first time since he found them. They smiled, even if only for a second. But their moment of peace didn't last. A red flash blinked on his scanner. A coded message was trying to break into the ship's firewall. He shut it down instantly, but not before one phrase appeared on the screen. "Return the cargo." Human. Derek's heart pounded. He turned and looked at the girls. They were laughing just seconds ago. Now they were staring at the screen too. They had seen the message. They understood. The silver-haired girl stood up slowly, walked to him, and placed her small hand over his. He looked at her, confused and scared, but she whispered one word for the first time, in a voice so soft it almost didn't exist. "Help." Derek nodded, not because he knew what to do, but because he couldn't turn away anymore. Not after what they'd been through. Not after what they'd shown him. These weren't cargo, or aliens, or problems. They were people. And they needed him now more than ever. Derek didn't expect to be woken up like that. He had only closed his eyes for a few minutes, or so he thought. But when he opened them, something sharp was pressed against his neck. A long curved metal piece, held by trembling alien fingers. It wasn't one of the girls. It was someone new. She stood in the dark like a shadow with glowing eyes, taller than the others. Her skin pale green and covered in tribal ink. Her mouth didn't move, but her thoughts echoed directly into Derek's mind like a whisper made of wind. "Where are the others?" Derek didn't speak. He didn't even move. The three girls peeked from behind crates, eyes wide with fear. They knew her, and they were afraid. Before he could answer, the silver-haired girl stepped forward. She didn't speak either, but she raised her arms and shook her head. The tall one paused, her weapon lowering just slightly. Then something unexpected happened. The silver-haired girl pointed at Derek, then at herself, then drew a wide circle in the air. The tall alien blinked and slowly knelt, not fully, just enough to show respect. Then she said something in a language Derek couldn't understand. The tension dropped, but Derek's heart still raced. Who was this new one? And how did she get on his ship? The girl with the cat ears. Whispered one word, so softly it barely formed. Sister. That changed everything. She wasn't an enemy, she was one of them. But how did she find them? And why was she alone? The tall alien turned to Derek again. This time her voice echoed gently inside his head. I followed the beacon pendant, but they broke the link. Derek nodded slowly, remembering the small device the silver-haired girl had given him. She had shut it down, hidden their trail. But somehow, this one had arrived just before the others could. She pointed to the scanner and drew a large X in the air, then showed 5 fingers, then 2. Derek understood 5 to 7 hours before others come. He got up quickly, checked the engines, and mapped out a new route. They couldn't stay here. Not anymore. The tall alien helped gather supplies without being asked. She was quiet but quick, strong but gentle with the younger ones, the way they looked at her. He could tell she used to protect them. Maybe she still did. The silver-haired girl sat beside Derek as he programmed the course. She tapped his arm and showed him a hand signed 4 fingers, then a twist. He didn't understand until she pointed to the stars and mimicked a lock. She was guiding him. She knew safe coordinates. Derek adjusted the route and locked it in. The ship began to hum louder as power built up. The tall alien sat down finally, across from Derek, her eyes sharp but calm. She pressed her fingers together and sent one last thought into his mind. If you protect them, you become a target. Derek looked at her and gave a tired laugh. I figured that out already, he whispered. She didn't smile, but her eyes softened just a little. Minutes later, the ship jumped, stars stretching into lines as they escaped through the dark. But something felt wrong. The cat-eared girl started shaking, her eyes rolling back slightly. She fell to her knees, and the other girls rushed to her. Derek ran for his medkit. Heart pounding, she was burning up, skin changing color slightly. He checked her vitals, unstable. The tall alien placed a hand on her and whispered something strange. Suddenly, the ship lights dimmed. The silver-haired girl stepped forward and reached for the sick one. She placed her hand gently on her chest, closed her eyes, and then her hair began to glow faintly blue. The sick girl gasped, then coughed and blinked slowly. Her temperature dropped, her breathing slowed. Derek watched in disbelief. Was it some kind of healing ability, or something more? The tall alien turned to him once again. They were changed during captivity, she said without speaking, each one different, damaged and gifted. Derek sat back, silent. These girls weren't just victims, they were something rare, something the galaxy would kill or cage to control. Now they were his passengers. And maybe more than that. The ship flew silently into deeper space. The girls slept again, this time closer together. Even the tall one closed her eyes, her back against the wall. But Derek couldn't sleep, not now. He stared at the stars and wondered, what had he gotten himself into, and how far was he willing to go to protect them? The alarms didn't scream, they whispered. That was worse. A soft red glow filled the cockpit. Warning of a long-range ping. Someone had scanned them, someone powerful. Derek leaned over the console, eyes scanning the data, encrypted signals. Large ship class, approaching from behind. It wasn't a trader, it wasn't a patrol. This was a hunter. He looked over his shoulder. The alien girls were still asleep, curled together like kittens in a nest. Except for the tall one. She was already standing in the shadows, her hand on a handle welded to the wall. She didn't blink, just stared at the screen. She already knew. Derek took manual control, twisting the ship toward a dead moon nearby. No atmosphere, no life, just craters and dust. But it had canyons deep enough to hide in, if only for a while. He pushed the engines hard, pulling extra power from life support to boost speed. The hum turned into a low roar. The ship shook, groaned, and dropped fast toward the moon. Behind them, the hunter ship followed, silent, patient, cold. Like it didn't even need to hurry. The ship hit the surface, kicking up dust. Derek slid then into a crevice so narrow the wings nearly scraped rock. Then he powered everything down, lights, heat, noise, everything. Complete silence. The girls woke slowly, confused. He raised one hand and whispered, "Shh." The silver-haired girl touched his arm and looked up at him with those deep, glowing eyes. She wasn't afraid this time, she was ready. The cat-eared girl crawled to the back and returned with something small. A twisted device made from his tools and scrap. She plugged it into the ship's broken comms array. The screen flickered, then flashed one signal jammer. It would give them time, maybe minutes, maybe hours. But it wasn't perfect. Derek looked at the tall alien. She nodded without words and started checking vents, escape routes, hidden compartments. She moved like a soldier, trained and focused. He realized something just then. She had done this before. Many times he followed her lead, sealing hatches and covering lights. The ship felt like a tomb now, dark and still. He could hear his own heartbeat, and theirs. One of the younger girls started to cry, soft at first, just a whimper. Then her shoulders began to shake. She covered her face, trying to hide it. Derek crouched beside her, unsure what to say. He wasn't good with kids, but he reached out and held her hand. She didn't pull away. That tiny touch meant more than words ever could. Suddenly, the screen lit up red again. A landing detected far off but closing in. The hunter ship had touched down, and they were coming on foot. The tall alien whispered something in her language, and the girls stood up. No more crying, no more fear. They moved quickly now. The silver-haired girl walked to Derek and placed something cold in his palm. It was a small glowing crystal, pulsing like a heartbeat. He looked at her, confused. She closed his fingers around it. Then she said one word, softly but clear. Boom. His eyes widened. Is this wait, you made a bomb? She tilted her head, then nodded slowly. A small smile touched her lips for the first time. Derek wanted to laugh, cry, and panic all at once, but he nodded back. All right, he said under his breath. Let's give them a surprise. The plan was risky, maybe stupid, but it was better than waiting to be caught. They planted the crystal bomb near the canyon mouth. The cat-eared girl used wires and metal scraps to rig a trigger device. The others hid under the ship, quiet as shadows. Minutes passed, then footsteps. Heavy boots echoed on the rock above. 3 figures in black armor appeared. Scanning with red lights, one of them spoke into a comm. Cargo confirmed. Signal faint, closing in. Derek watched from a hole in the hull. Breath frozen, he waited, then signaled. The silver-haired girl pressed the trigger. Nothing. A second passed, then another, then light. The crystal flared blue, then exploded with a pulse of energy. No fire, no heat, just a sound wave that shattered their suits and fried their comms. The hunters dropped, not dead, but out cold. The alien girls didn't cheer. They didn't need to. They just watched the dust settle. Derek stood up slowly, heart pounding. He looked at the silver-haired girl. She looked back and said another word. Safe. But only for now, because if those hunters had come, more would follow. And Derek knew, deep in his gut, he wasn't just smuggling cargo anymore. He was protecting something rare, something dangerous, and maybe something that could change everything. The ship's alarm screamed suddenly. Loud and sharp, Derek's hands flew to the controls. But it was too late. A violent shake rocked the vessel, throwing him against the wall. Outside the windows, red flashes and bursts of light filled the dark space. They were under attack. The hunter's ship had returned with reinforcements. Bigger, faster, armed with weapons Derek had never seen. His ship's shields faltered under the assault, sparks flying from the panels. The alien girls scrambled, their eyes wide with terror. But the tall warrior stood firm, her gaze hard and steady. She barked silent orders with gestures, moving the girls to safety. Derek gritted his teeth, fighting to keep the ship steady. He activated the emergency thrusters and pulled up sharply. The ship lurched away from the surface, but the attackers were relentless. They fired again, and this time, a sharp impact struck the hull. The lights flickered, then dimmed, inside. The silver-haired girl clutched Derek's arm. Her glow pulsed brighter than before. She whispered a word that filled the cabin. Together. Suddenly, the power surged back, systems rebooting with a strange hum. The ship's engine roared. As if powered by a new force, Derek watched in disbelief as blue light flowed from the alien girls' bodies into the controls. Their captive strength, their broken gifts, now healing the ship. The tall warrior nodded once. She stepped forward and placed her hand on the control panel. A sudden burst of energy exploded from her palm. The attacker's ship shuddered and faltered in response. Weapons jammed, engines sputtered. For the first time, Derek saw the hunters hesitate, taking his chance. Derek pushed the ship into hyperdrive. Stars stretched and blurred as they escaped. But the cost was clear: damage everywhere. The ship groaned, systems failing slowly in the quiet that followed. Derek looked at the girls, their eyes still glowing. Faintly, the cat-eared one smiled weakly. For the first time, hope returned. The tall warrior spoke softly inside his mind. "We survive because we fight as one." Derek understood then. They weren't just victims. They were warriors, and with him, they would fight back. Asterisk. The stars stretched into long streaks of light as Derek's ship jumped through hyperdrive. Behind them, the threat faded into distant blurs. For the first time in days, the ship felt calm. The alien girls gathered near the control panel, watching the new stars with quiet awe. Derek looked at them and realized how much had changed. These girls were no longer scared prisoners. They were survivors, fighters, and maybe something more. Suddenly, the silver-haired girl stood and touched the glowing crystal she had given. Derek, her eyes shone bright with determination. She pointed at the navigation screen and made a slow circle. The signal was faint but clear, an ancient rebel base, hidden deep in a forgotten system. Derek nodded. It was risky, but it was the only place they could find safety and answers. The tall warrior moved beside him silently. She placed a hand on his shoulder. No words were needed. He was part of their family now. As the ship approached the rebel base, the air inside grew heavy with hope and fear. They landed smoothly on a rusted platform, surrounded by old ships and alien flags. Rebel fighters of many species watched them closely, but instead of weapons, they held open hands. Welcoming arms, the alien girls stepped forward, their chains of slavery broken, their faces proud for the first time. The silver-haired girl spoke clearly, a voice filled with strength. "We are free," she said, "and we will fight for our future." Derek smiled softly. He had come to protect them, but now they protected each other, and he would stand with them. Because some battles were bigger than one man, and some families were chosen in the stars.